Echo is out in full on Disney Plus and Hulu simultaneously. This is the latest show in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 5 episodes dropped all at once, which is a first for a Marvel D Plus show. It's also new in the sense that it's the first R-rated property in the MCU, and it's part of a new sort of sub-brand called Marvel Spotlight, which is supposed to be dedicated to more standalone stories which do not require knowledge of the wider MCU properties to enjoy, and also are not part of some larger narrative, so they won't be pushing things, and they are not required viewing for future properties, but they can just be viewed as their own thing. Which honestly makes it strange that they picked Echo for that, if I'm being honest, because it's a character that debuted in Hawkeye, and the villain is Kingpin from the Netflix Daredevil show. So it kind of does require you to know these other things to fully enjoy it. But I guess Marvel has been all over the place lately with all things production related, so I'm not surprised that they fumbled the bag on this one as well. The show follows Maya Lopez, the deaf indigenous character with a prosthetic leg from Hawkeye, who in that show was a henchman or a henchwoman, I guess, of Wilson Fisk. And after shooting him in the face at the end of that show, she goes back to her hometown of Tahoma, where she reconnects with some of the people from her old life and begins to do things which I suppose are meant to lead into her disrupting the remaining Fisk operations and eventually taking them over as a new boss. But of course it turns out Kingpin made it out alive and he's back for what's his. So I'm afraid I didn't like the show very much. I think it has the same problem which plagued so many of the other D Plus shows, which is that it was very clearly written as a movie and follows a typical 3-act movie structure stretched into 5 television episodes, and that is not a very good way to do television shows. That means it feels at the same time long and short. Long because what little plot there is feels like it's kind of stretched and contains some filler, and short because it feels like we barely spend any time at all with the characters. There's no actual character development before the whole thing is over. There are also 2 other very significant problems. The first one has to do with the main plot, which is almost non-existent. Like, I tried to answer myself at various points in time, what are the goals and motivations and plans of any of the characters? What does Maya want, and what does she do to achieve that goal? And even after the show is over, I struggle to find answers. Like, Maya says that she actually just says it once in passing, but she says she wants to take over the Kingpin Empire. But I guess her only plan is to put a bomb on a train and then wait in Tahoma to be caught by the people coming to punish her. She doesn't have any clear plan or objective aside from that. We never know what is her thought process or motivation at any given time. Similarly, Fisk wants to take her back under his wing, but I think we're not given enough answers as to why he's so hell-bent on that. Why doesn't he just cut her loose or take his revenge? I mean, it doesn't make sense. All of the other characters are unfortunately just glorified set dressing at the end of the day. Like, some of the side characters have 1 or 2 pretty cool scenes, and that's it. We sort of never see them again except as kind of background. And the second big issue that I'd highlight is that the show tries to split itself between 2 very different things. On the one hand, it wants to follow the street level crime story grounded story of Maya and Fisk, but it also wants to explore the indigenous and magical side of things by changing how Maya's powers work. So in the comic books, her only superpower was photographic memory and reflexes, which meant she could watch someone perform a task or an action and be able to replicate it instantly and perfectly, whether it was martial arts or playing an instrument or dancing or whatever else. And by the way, this character debuted in the 1998 run of Daredevil, which I highly recommend as a whole, but specifically issue 9, which starts the Echo arc. I really recommend reading that part of the run because the Echo appearances especially have a kind of striking, distinct art to them. But going back to the show, here her powers are that she sort of has a connection to her ancestors, and each of them possessed various kinds of magical powers, and she can sort of access them in times of need. So they echo through her, which isn't a terrible change on paper, but I think it does take away from her being just a grounded, mostly regular person, and it means we just have yet another superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it means we spend some time each episode on these flashbacks to her various ancestors to introduce them, show them what their power was, who they were, and and it also introduces another magical element to the universe, to a universe which I think doesn't really need any other magical elements. I mean, in Marvel we've already had the Norse mythology, the Greek mythology, the Eternals, the Egyptian mythology in Moon Knight. There's 3 different kinds of time travel and multiverses. I mean, it all starts to make less and less sense, and I think throwing more shit at the wall isn't really doing it any favors. And also the magic here is not really explained all that well. It's kind of just there. And that I didn't like so much. I also have to say that as much as Alaqua Cox, who plays the lead role, seems like a cool person from the promotional material and so on, she doesn't convince me with her acting. She feels kind of flat and not good enough to carry a show where so much of her internal thinking has to be made clear to the audience with the physical performance, especially as she is deaf. I did like the supporting cast, particularly Chasky Spencer, Tantu Cardinal, and Graham Greene. Those 3 were all great. Vincent D'Onofrio is terrific as Fisk, as always, even though I'm not sure I enjoy the direction that the writing has taken this character. There's an excellent fight scene in the first episode, which is a sort of long extended take, which includes Daredevil and is very clearly an homage to the Netflix Daredevil show. But unfortunately that peak is never really reached again, and there's a train sequence which looks very green screeny and kind of like a worse version of the same thing we already had in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And the whole show, the climax of the final episode, ends up in such a laughably pathetic fight scene. It's just something straight out of Power Rangers. Cheaply looking, stupid, no tension at all, and then it gets resolved very abruptly. Really, really bad stuff. Also, the R rating really only means like 5 scenes in total over the entire show, which feature violence and blood and people shooting each other in the head. Outside of that, it doesn't really feel all that mature, especially in terms of the story itself. So yeah, I didn't like it. It felt off somehow, like a collection of scenes where some of them are actually really good, some of them are mediocre, some of them are bad, but they lack any connective tissue. And going into the series, or even starting with the series being announced in the first place, I had one key question. Why should I care about this character? And that question remains unanswered.